websites that pointed at this one website and get a few links onto their websites and stuff like this. Like it wasn't too hard to fool a few people like that, and since you would start with an equal weighting, you could do that.
Yeah, everything pulls up from there.
Yeah, and that one global calculation is feasible for Google.
Yeah.
And in Secure Scuttlebutt, basically each peer does their own calculation starting with them.
I see.
So it's like everyone gets their own calculation. And since it's just a network of humans rather than of websites, it doesn't really matter that one person doesn't have to calculate the entire internet, just the part of the network that they might touch.
Yeah, I see.
So it's like their friends and their friends of friends and maybe one more hop, and if they want to ask for, like if you wanted to find a taxi driver or something like this, you could ask in an unfamiliar place, you could ask one of your connections that links you to that place.
Yep.
And by the nature of social networks, it's only a few hops to go anywhere in the world.
Yes.
So you can get an introduction to take you to those places.
So there's a whole bunch of structured stuff that potentially flows over the initial network.
Yes.
So I think we've gotten a long way down a bunch of extremely interesting rabbit holes without actually giving a top-down description of what Secure Scuttlebutt is.
Yeah. So basically, it's a decentralized database that maps very closely to a social media, any kind of social media application.
Okay, so decentralized encrypted Twitter, but made for high bandwidth communication between machines?
Well, I wouldn't put the emphasis on high bandwidth communication. I would call it a persistent. Basically, you have like on Twitter, you have a feed.
Yeah.
Your Twitter feed, and you can tweet, and it adds a new thing to the end. We have the same thing. You have an append-only structure, so you can say a thing, then later you can say another thing.
Yeah.
And you can say another thing, and you are the only one who can write to your feed.
Yes. So I've got a key pair. I make a statement. I sign the statement. I put the statement into this mumble decentralized database.
Yep.
Okay. Go on.
And then people follow each other, who they want to, who they're interested in, and then so you follow feeds that interest you for some reason, and then your computer will replicate those onto your things, and then you'll have them offline.
Yeah.
That means, since they're signed, it means you can pass them on to other people as well. So that has the neat property that the uptime for any particular node, the requirements of the SLA, the service level agreement, is very low.
So I pop online, I grab a whole bunch of stuff from all of my friends who've got cached copies of it. I then reassemble that into a time stream and read it, and if somebody else wants any of that stuff, they can come get it off me.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. And because it has this, because you keep it locally and have like this gossip structure, it has some neat things like it works over local Wi-Fi. So if you're both on the same Wi-Fi, you can detect each other and replicate.
Yep.
And so imagine zombie apocalypse. All of the national scale infrastructure has failed.
Yes.
Your fiber stopped working.
No.
Sorry. Well, you've got solar panels and diesel generator. Some. And then
Don't ask what's in the other apocalypse boxes.
As long as you've got some, enough to keep your Wi-Fi network running.
Yep.
Then what you could do is you can still establish a network of other strongholds that you are friends with, and you just need to send runners or drones to them occasionally, and you've still got you can have a completely functional knowledge infrastructure.
So somebody has the job of going around Berlin on a bicycle, just basically reconnecting the entire messages because they've got some kind of Wi-Fi gear in the back of the bike.
Yep, that would work fine.
Yeah.
Or just as
useful.
people casually travel would work like this. Basically, you're ready, and because there's places on Earth that are basically ready the zombie apocalypse.
Yep. Yeah. Collapse means living in the same conditions as the people who grow your coffee. Yeah. Okay, so that is a basic kind of top-down description. I've got information, I sign it, I publish it, it goes into a decentralized database, it gets carried around by anybody that happens to have a piece of the database. So you're traveling, I interrogate your computer and say, hey, here are the 58 people that I'm following that you're also following, can you give me the most recent updates you have from them? Got it.
Yep.
And I mean that sounds like a very flexible, very generic thing.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, this is infrastructure, right? This is pipes.
Yeah.
What is the status of the pipes? How much of that stuff is written? How much of it is theory?
Well, we've got a couple of there's already a couple of applications built on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a Patchwork and which is basically just a social media discussion platform.
Yep.
There's Git SSB, which gives you a decentralized GitHub that has repos, pull requests, issues.
Wow.
That works.
Fully decentralized.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So and then
wow.
there's a SoundCloud clone called Ferment.
Wow.
Which you can post music on, and it then replicates the audio over BitTorrent.
Oh, that's delightful.
Yeah.
That's delightful.
That was made by Matt McKeag. Sal made Git SSB. Paul Ferrisy and myself made the patchwork stuff. Another guy, Anzus, has just recently started working on DNSSB, which is DNS over this over secure scuttlebutt. I think this is going to be interesting because he's going to have to really hammer down how naming works.
Yes.
Because
yes.
So this is actually one interesting thing. It's like perhaps the key point in the user experience where where Patchwork diverges from what you're used to on Facebook is that, or Twitter, is that you're not guaranteed a globally unique name.
Right.
You have a globally unique identity, which is your public key.
Yes.
But then your name is just what people call you.
So here we insert Zuko's triangle.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And
we'd better summarize Zuko's triangle.
So what is it? Human memorable. So one corner, human memorable, secure, and decentralized.
Yeah.
And we are it says choose two.
Yeah.
We are trying to basically go somewhere in the middle area.
Well, I mean, Namecoin was the first thing that I saw that fixed this. The point where I really began to take blockchain seriously was Namecoin.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bitcoin, I'm just like, it's another currency. We've had currencies, they don't do anything. Then I saw Namecoin, saw that it basically squared Zuko's triangle, and it was like, oh, okay, this blockchain thing is a fundamental breakthrough. Because if you could fix the naming problem, you could fix the world.
Yeah.
In a very direct sense. The fact that all of our computing resources are organized by archaic national boundary lines, .co, .cn, .in, .uk, .us. The fact that we carried all of that nationalism into the computer network. One of my kind of favourite counterfactuals is what would have happened if the first heavy users of the internet had been librarians and they just ported the Dewey Decimal System for the internet namespace. Right? So you'd have this single global unique hierarchical namespace for everything divided by categories of knowledge, and rather than reifying, .mx for Mexico and .cn for China, you'd have had, whatever, 151, history of the Western world, history of the Western world's contact with Asia, and you could basically go down this thing, even though that thing bakes in a whole bunch of completely archaic and bizarre assumptions.
Yeah.
They're just different, bizarre, and archaic assumptions. But I keep thinking like how different the internet would feel if it had been organised on Dewey rather than on nation state. You'd still have these enormously, viciously guarded turf boundaries, but it would be the mathematicians and the physicists arguing about who got their own calculus. Or whatever it would be, what I'm saying? It would be that kind of thing.
Although on the next layer down, on the IP layer, that I think is necessarily geographical, because you were saying like
It's
where do I send
routability?
Yeah, I've got a where do I send this packet? Which direction do I send it? To the east or do I send it to the west?
Yes. Yes. Here's a switch. Here's two cables. Which cable do you want the message sending? I think we should take a 5-minute break. I'm going to basically put the kettle on, make a cup of tea for folks.
Right.
By all means, continue gossiping, but it will get a little noisy while the kettle's on.
Right.
Tea, coffee,
Over tea.
tea. Well, caffeinated, lemon and ginger.
Oh, just like in Earl Grey or something?
Earl Grey, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Sorry, I'm really not on some phone today.
There are grey days in winter.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's nasty outside, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
No
I'm
fan.
wearing an umbrella with me. I have got some kind of waterproof jacket.
We have
Oh,
clothes
you-
around the house.
Good point.
You definitely want to take a nap.
Yeah, I will.
Pressure.
What's going on with David? Seagull.
I think the plan is that Stuart's going to come over here sometime early this evening and drop off some stuff.
Okay.
And then we will traipse down there and see
Stuart wanted my spare ticket, so I'm gonna, I still have that. I don't have a physical ticket, obviously.
Yeah.
But I need to talk to them about changing it so that Stuart can use it.
I'm just going to leave the break in the video. This is kind of one of the things that I've discovered that if you do things in a way that looks like anything you can do at home, people find it so much more accessible. You know, the trade-off between like,
Yeah. Yes, I have experienced this as well. Like, I have this wacky bicycle that it's a folding bike turns into a recumbent bicycle. By welding on a few bits and cutting off a few bits and stuff like this. But I was inspired by, this, I don't remember his name, but the microchip guy. He's like, he, in the early 80s, he decided, he was like probably the first cyber nomad. I think he might have like, yes,
bicycle thing.
yes, that's it, yeah. I was like, should better do that with mostly off the shelf parts
I'm
now.
a huge fan of that book.
Yeah. And I bought this folding bicycle, it was really rugged folding bicycle in Cambodia for $38.
Whoa.
And brought it back to New Zealand in plane, and then in in friends' houses with their friends' tools, basically, recompensized it, and then but it's like the bowsprit is like blue and the back is red, and when I ride past it, it's like obviously something is weird, and it looks rather like I made it myself.
Yes.
And it means like a lot of people just like stop and talk to me about it. But especially interesting is it across like social economic groups, or like I found that the more like educated, refined middle class people, they'll look, but they're much less likely to say something than so I was in California and had like far more black people talk to me than ever before. Suddenly they had a
because you've got a thing that's just it's handmade and handed together.
and yeah, exactly. Obviously, with that. And another time I built this sailing canoe. It was like outrigger, like Polynesian style outrigger canoe, and the sail was made of a tarpaulin, like bright blue stuff, and so it's like instantly everyone could relate to this because they use this to cover the trash and when they go to the dump and stuff like that. So it was like instantly I wasn't some rich fuck with a fancy boat. I was like
some madman.
Yeah.
I would love to do a podcast that is just you describing things that you have built. It could be like a slideshow with pictures.
Oh, we could do that.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, it'd make a good stage show. Right? Like, here's my kind of vacation pictures. Because you've done so many completely batshit things. Amazing.
I wouldn't want to blow all my stories on the internet because then I can't like
Yeah,
other
then you
people
can't tell.
there.
Yeah. True enough. I think it's an amazing thing. I've had my fair share of wacky adventures, but the only thing I ever built was the damn Hexiarch.
Well, you can see it's still pretty good.
Well, I mean, a lot of the things which make the Hexiarch great are things which are a product of me building something simple enough that I could build it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I don't really have great making skills.
Yeah. But that's the brilliant thing about it.
Yeah.
is that it's a thing you want to build.
I mean, so much I found that my actual impact in the world is defined by my disability.
Yeah.
It's the dyslexia, it's the slight cat-handedness, it's the fear of power tools.
Yeah.
You know, it's all of that stuff combined.
Yeah.
That means that I have to build things which are simple enough for me,
Mhm.
and if they're simple enough for me, they're simple enough for anybody.
Yeah.
It's odd that working around a deficit actually turns out to be for mostly creative powers.
Yeah. Yeah, or, I mean, very often that's the case.
I just didn't realise quite as weird which applied to me.
That's the like punk rock way rather than the prog rock way.
Oh, that's interesting. Punk rock versus prog rock is
Yeah.
two kind of poles of that's fascinating. Huh. Yeah, that's remarkable. Okay, glasses for tea.
Thank you very much.
Tea. That was water.
That was what you
Yeah. I'll come in a second.
Yeah, it's looking pretty grey out there. That's tea, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's a lovely device.
Mhm.
Yeah, the really clever thing about this is the screw threading on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are great. I've got
Oh,
one.
on the inside, which means this can turn.
And it only needs a very, very few number of turns to get it completely closed or completely opened.
Mhm.
So it's like, I don't know, a half a turn or something like that, maybe a full turn. It's got distinctly wintry out there.
Mm.
Alright, let's crack on. Should I pour?
Yeah.
This is my other great kind of domestic innovation is tea and thermos
Mhm.
flasks. Because there's nothing worse than making tea and then the tea is cold. You
Yeah.
want more tea.
Yeah.
So tea and thermos flasks. It does tend to oversteep. So
Right.
I always need to pull the tea bags back out and I haven't found an elegant way of doing it yet.
So you could just put the boiled water in the flask and then make tea on demand with fresh tea bags as you need it.
Yes. Or, potentially I could just ladle out tea bags. Anyway, we were here to talk about cryptography.
We should do a podcast on, sort of domestic, kind of tips
Oh
for the
yeah.
household, how to make various different kinds of tea.
I think of
The sous vide cooker, obviously.
sous vide cooker. I think what we wanted was a 3-ring binder
Mm.
and a case of equipment, which is basically given to the entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
like the ones that have.
Here's how to live cheaply.
Here's how to live cheaply and effectively.
Yeah.
I think the possibility that we could become a YouTube lifestyle brand is,
Yeah.
something that's going to have to be investigated at some point.
What is that thing with the hairy bikers that cook
Yeah,
You
so
know,
hairy bikers. Yes.
something like that. We could basically have this kind of, fat beard television. But I mean, the quality of life stuff. Like, I'm completely convinced that psychological resilience is massively underpriced at a startup environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most companies don't break because they run out of money. They break because they run out of emotional energy.
Yeah.
And the sort of, sacrificial principle thing, which is completely embedded in San Francisco.com culture,
Yeah.
is you basically bleed until you succeed.
Yeah.
And I think that, the VCs have basically inculcated those values into people as a way of separating the people that are really going to do it versus the people that are
Mm-hmm.
basically faking.
Yeah.
The problem is that the psychological toll on the people that really want to do it
Yeah.
is enormous.
Yeah.
And it's not that unusual for the fakers to accidentally become enormously successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go into this thing because it seems better than getting a job, but you turn out to have a knack for it, or you turn out to have exactly
Mhm.
identified some sweet spot in the market. So, often the kind of scheming, conniving, lazy folk who exactly identify the opportunity, will do vastly better than the people that are just incredibly viciously diligent.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I kind of feel like a suffering-free approach
Mhm.
to it, where we accept that high quality of life for the people that are doing the innovating
Mhm.
makes them more likely to succeed. We don't try and char people. We don't use suffering as a threshold to get people into the game. We use competence,
Mm-hmm.
luck. I think that there's a different way of running the equilibrium
Mm-hmm.
than a bunch of starving college students on a 3-month budget.
Mm-hmm.
That could lever what we know about human productivity, what we know about motivation, what we know about resilience, what we know about, frankly, just the shape of the innovation market, and this notion of the three-ring binder, where it's like, okay, here's your Ocado account, here are the things that will arrive every week. If you want that changed, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the electric pressure cooker, here's the maid service, here's the, some banquet table. Once a week somebody will come around and cook something really good for you guys and check in how you're doing. And you could kind of go through that list
Mm-hmm.
so that you get this kind of lifestyle package which we think optimizes for psychological resilience and productivity,
Mm-hmm.
rather than this kind of burning of the rocket ship as you hit
Yeah.
re-entry and the hoping that you can
Yeah.
put the wings on before you hit the wall, which is basically the San Francisco mindset.
Yeah. I learnt
European.
to do this myself from because I started my training for mad science projects, is what I call things like Secure Scuttlebutt, was sailing, especially sailing by myself,
Wow.
solo sailing. And
Wow.
there's definitely, to be interested in solo sailing, you have to kind of enjoy suffering. But you need to look after yourself so that you can look after the boat, so that the boat can look after you.
Wow.
So you have to deal with fatigue, but you
Yes.
have to manage your fatigue, because if you get too fatigued, that's when you do something. That's when you make bad decisions, and that's when, and basically you could die. And so to stop that, you have to keep 3 steps away from it. Because how something all goes wrong is it's not because just one thing happens.
Yeah,
out of the
yeah,
fluke.
yeah. You get
It's an error of
cascades.
a chain of errors.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
if you prevent them 3 steps away, then you'll have a great time.
Yes.
And if you let the errors compound, then, and the way you do that to prevent the errors compounding is by stopping them before they happen.
Yeah. So you have to. I mean, the sort of equipment thing is 3 means 2, 2 means 1, 1 means none.
Yeah.
That you always have to assume that you're going to lose at least 1, and if that leaves you in a position where if you lose 1 more, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You're already screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, somebody said to me once that what makes the difference between professional chefs and sort of enthusiastic amateur cooks is that when professional chefs have finished, the kitchen is cleaner than it was when they started.
Yeah.
And that it's actually the continuous cleaning,
Yeah.
which is the critical skill that differentiates the professionals from the amateurs.
Yeah.
And that's very, interesting. Same thing with medical procedures.
Mhm.
It's the lack of error that's the discriminating factor, and that's
Yeah.
largely about teams being in good condition.
Yeah.
Checklists.
There's a saying in sailing that you can learn to sail around the bay in the afternoon, but the difference between a good sailor between a bad sailor and a good sailor is what they do in an emergency.
Yeah.
And the difference between a good sailor and a great sailor is how many emergencies they get into.
So the very good ones are just emergency avoidant.
Yes, but
So
and
you
that
never
means
wind up
they
in
can
the
do
mess.
far more extreme things.
Wow. Because you
Um,
just don't make the little mistakes
Yeah,
that accumulate.
yeah. Then they can then they can actually
I like that.
you know sail to Antarctica or something like this because they are
It's a scary thing,
Yeah.
being on a boat with nothing but your own competence or incompetence. I mean, that's a really.
Mhm.
I mean, you're a long way from everything.
yeah. But the thing, like, I've never tried to sail to Antarctica.
No, no.
I'm not claiming to be an expert, but the neat thing about boats is that you can. It doesn't matter how the adventure is in proportion to the boat. So if you have a small crappy boat, you can still have a great adventure only doing the small thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. I used to. So my thing was like wandering around. So most of the people that go backpacking are going backpacking to try and get from A to B
Yep.
kind of quickly.
Yep.
Whereas my thing was always just wandering around outdoors.
Yep.
Not really going very far, but
Mhm.
going for quite a long time.
Yep.
And the sort of kind of thing that I discovered was the fun only really begins at the end of the gear.
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
part of the reason that the ultralight hiking community
Mhm.
is so incredibly successful is when you're going out with a 10 kilogram pack for everything, the whole process is continuous innovation and continuous improvisation because you just don't have the equipment.
Yep.
So it took lots of things like, I mean, if you're going out with a 40, 50 pound pack at this point, the gear is so good and it's so light
Mhm.
that you're basically invulnerable. You know, there's almost
Well,
nothing that
yeah.
can go wrong. You know, I mean, okay, you could break a leg if you fall over something,
Mhm.
but short of that kind of problem, you've got so many layers of resilience in a 40, 50 pound pack
Mhm.
that it becomes more or less mechanistic to just tromp through the woods.
Yep.
There's no point where you see the edge of the horizon and have to start moving.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But if you go out with a 10 kilogram pack, even relatively simple things become genuinely hard
Mhm.
to the point where you actually get the activation of the deeper kind of faculties.
Except for carrying your gear.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one thing that's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. And I think that stuff is also interesting. Like, I like to go camping with like minimal improvised stuff because I feel that going out into nature is about, you know, rethinking your relationship with society.
Yeah.
So if you do it with stuff you've made yourself, then you're much more in control of that relationship.
Yeah.
If you do it with expensive equipment that you've bought that came through some complicated supply chain, then you're more tied. Your umbilical to society
Yeah,
is stronger than
Absolutely.
it is if you had, you know, made it from sort of ubiquitous materials or something like that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean that notion that there's a kind of fun perimeter, which is, you know, some interaction between environment and equipment, and you
Yeah.
just wind up with this kind of margin.
Yeah.
I think there's a real deep principle there that again we just don't have much of a name for.
Right.
Another place it shows up is peak oil.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the kind of transition times thing
Mm-hmm.
was this idea that if you reduce your demand for oil faster than the supply reduces,
Oh, right. Then you experience abundance.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you reduce more slowly than demand reduces, you end up with this crunch.
Mm.
And this idea that you kind of have a sweet spot that is just inside the parameter of the space,
Yeah.
and that you can, if you learn how to steer into that sweet spot, you stay in a good condition,
Yeah.
even in relatively bad conditions.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't really have a way of saying you have such good equipment that you will not have any good, that you will not enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, it's quite hard. We don't have a ready language for you are over equipped. You will not enjoy this, not because you're carrying too much, but because you've closed up all the gaps where you'd have had to actually do something that felt challenging, that felt interesting, that felt different. And there's lots of things about this notion of the kind of almost like thermostatic controls for optimizing for where the good part is of a system that has lots of dimensions.
Yeah.
We just don't have good language for that kind of stuff.
It's like a balance between too easy and too hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I bet there's some language somewhere where they've got a huge thing on that.
Well, there's the
China.
like the flow state, but that doesn't really.
It's not quite it. But like, you know, Japanese, Chinese, there are lots of concepts for states of being that we don't have great names for.
Mhm.
I mean, the whole wabi-sabi, like the brokenness, the beauty of things which are broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that whole kind of a thing. There must be, you know, somebody will have a bunch of words that we could go and pinch.
Mm-hmm.
from Taoism or from or Japanese, whatever it would be, craft probably. The notion that you're making something which is at exactly the right level of difficulty. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's a Japanese word for, the apprentice is making something that is at the right level of difficulty for them to learn. They will not fail, but they will not easily succeed. There's the correct fit between the thing and the task.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the words.
Having good words is very important. Have you heard of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis?
Yes.
So the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is this idea that you can't, if you don't have the right language for things, then you can't think those thoughts. And at the time, they proposed a quite strong version of that like these ideas were simply invisible to you. Like nowadays, no one proposes like that serious an idea, but there's a even better way of putting it that I read was there's mold theories of language and cloak theories. And a mold theory means that language shapes your thought. And a cloak theory says that your language drapes over and reveals the shape of your thought.
There's an underlying structure in there.
And that the cloak theory doesn't really tell you much about language. But the mold theory, I think, is more interesting. And then we can sort of talk about like we can actually sense the mold, and this is what's happening here. It's like there should be a word here, but we can't. We haven't created it yet.
We don't have it.
That's where we can feel the language mold, but we're like, let's like chip through this bit, and then maybe we'll have a flow through there.
I have a definite belief that we are in a position where our inability to form new language is becoming like the critical cultural bottleneck. Things are changing so quickly. Like, Alexa, what time is it?
5 p.m.
Right. So, Alexa, what time is it?
The time is 1:46 p.m.
Right. And it's like, when did that happen? Right. It happened yesterday because I Amazon Primed a hockey pack that I plugged in that understands what I say when I ask it things and always plays the wrong music when I ask it to play music. So if you listen to statistically improbable stuff, it doesn't have enough training data. Right? So the VR rig, right? You bring this thing up here, an entire world of weirdness explodes out of it. Amazon Prime now, which is just insane. Like, I've had people just drop their jaws when it's like, we need a such and such. And then an hour and a half later, somebody knocks on the door and hands it to me. What a feels. The fiber broadband that actually works. It tick 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 tick. We're just in this environment where, I'm beginning to see this definite perimeter of things are really changing. But my ability to describe to people like,